Hey YouTube, it's Hex again. I'm right here. Let me just get situated. I'm going to plug you guys in. How is everyone doing? All is well over here. I am going to make another video talking about why all is well and how busy I have been. But this video I'm coming to talk to you guys about is actually a video response to Ember Honeyravens' video when she talked about my gosh, I have some notes here, guys. Sorry, I'm just kind of looking to see. When she talked about her sexuality and the craft and whether or not she was born a witch or did she teach herself how to become a witch and you know, all of that conversation that she had. And I just wanted to kind of give my viewpoints because I thought it was a really good point to make, and I think a lot of people see it it's a very similar thought process that a lot of people have, but they each maybe for themselves feel a little differently. So I'm just going to answer some questions that I kind of wrote down that I pulled from her video and kind of give my insights as to what I think about that. So the main question really was, were you born a witch or did you decide to become one? If I'm being totally honest, I think everyone who actively decides to listen to their intuition and follow the path of witchcraft and becoming a witch and living their life in that way, whether it be the way that I do it or the way that Ember does it or like the way my grandmother did it, where she was considered a Christian woman, but she did a lot of spiritual things that weren't really religious, that were more pagan in nature than anything she's ever was aware of. So I think everyone is born a witch, and you know, if you believe in reincarnation, 9 out of 10 times you were probably a witch in your past life as well, in some way or another, depending on what culture you lived in, or where your spirit came from at the time, or your soul. So, this is where it's hard. You have some people who are very open-minded and choose to leave, for instance, Christianity and become a Wiccan because it calls to them and it makes more sense to them in terms of the structure. It's not as cut and dry as Christianity, and it's not as damning as Christianity can be to a lot of people. So I think, you know, and Emma made a good point about sexuality. So I wanted to address that as well. As a bisexual male witch, I think, you know, and this is just my perspective, I think that I have a harder time being accepted and fitting into what we know as the world of witchcraft, because witch is typically seen as a woman. That's just a generalized term, especially since Hollywood was able to grab it and morph it into something. But for me, witch is a term of the craft that we practice, and you're a practitioner of witchcraft, whether you're male or female. And a lot of people would have this same question: did you choose to be bisexual, or did you choose to? Were you born it? And it, you know, for 90% of the time, I'm going to say 99% of the time, if you are LGBTQIA, you are born that way, plain and simple. You know from a young age. You know you're different. You may not quite understand it, but you know there's something different at a young age. And so I feel like the same thing for witchcraft. I've known since I was a child. I was called to it. I was always, you know, I wanted to be a wizard damn near every Halloween. It was either a wizard or a ninja when I was a child. Just all of those little things lead you to the path that you're on now. Sorry guys, somebody just opened the door and it, like, my curtain completely moved and it freaked me out for a second. But yeah, so I think that addresses that. It can also be like a nature versus nurture type of situation, and I think a little bit of both play into who you are as a person and who you are as a witch. You may be raised Christian, but you will never have the Christian morals that, you know, and the way that that a Christian person would think as a pagan, because it's completely contradictory. Um, and so I think it's hard because in some way or another, whether people want to admit it or not, this is actually tying into the next question, talking about heritage witchery. Somewhere in your family, I don't care where you come from, you are the bloodline of a witch of some kind. Every culture has had them. So where you come from, you have someone in your family who was a witch at one point that was passed down to you. It's the potential that everyone has. And whether you choose to embrace that or not is completely up to you. But, you know, I just think that some generation or another, there was a witch somewhere. You know, on my mom's side, I was able to trace my family tree. We have a 2,000-page book that a family member of ours has made. I'm trying to get my hands on a copy of it now, but I did take a look through it, and it traces all the way back to the 1500s in France. And back then, there was even, you know, the areas of France that it comes from were known to have a lot of spiritual people. It wasn't a predominantly Christian area until much around that time to much later, when a lot of the Christians had migrated west into Europe, or north, depending on where they come from. And you know, the European witch trials, a lot of witches fled from England and fled from Italy and Greece and Rome, and the Middle East into France, Romania. I mean, the list goes on and on, but they fled from those areas, and so they settled there. So 90% of the time, depending on what your background is, as far as your ethnicity, you have a witch in your family. So technically, you're born a witch. It's your open-minded decision to actively pursue that. You know, I just knew. Spirit was drawing me to it. It was calling to me. It's something that, you know, I felt wrong doing because I was raised to be Christian, and it wasn't something I was condemned, but I just felt like I had to hide it for a long time. And now that I don't, it's so much better. You know, on my 18th birthday, I went to see a psychic. There's a little store, Ember, if you're watching this, you've been to one of the locations for the store when you went to Lady Lake in Temecula, California. There's also another location up here in Idlewild, which is probably a half hour from my house. It's up in the mountains, and they do a psychic fair the second Saturday of every month. So, and it just happened to fall on my 18th birthday. I saw a psychic, and, you know, one of the things she told me was that she could see within my soul and my spirit and the energy that comes from my bloodline that it's a very powerful pull towards this side of religion and spirituality. There's so much more to it than that. I'm not going to go into too many details because it was a pretty personal reading, but I just wanted to share that with you, because I think, you know, Ember had some really good points on whether or not, you know, you're born a witch or how you become a witch or whatever the case may be. It's not going to be the same for everyone, but I want to say that probably 90% of us are going to have the same answer that Ember had. If you guys haven't watched that video, I highly suggest you watch that video, because it was pretty insightful. Ember made some really good points, and I felt, you know, I talked to her in the comments on her video, and I just felt like I needed to make this video addressing that, you know, as a male and, you know, a witch, you know, my stance is probably going to be something that a lot more people can relate to, because, you know, I'm bisexual, which a lot of people unfortunately in the gay community don't recognize as a truthful situation. I call myself a witch or a pagan, depending on who I'm talking to. And I feel like I was born this way. So it just made it was a really good point. So Ember, thank you for making that video. I think you addressed something that a lot of people don't really talk about in the community, and I felt like I needed to make this video. So my consensus is I was born a witch. I'm choosing to live the witchy lifestyle. And that's about it. I mean, there's not much really more to say about it. You either choose to convert after you've studied up on something, or you are just called to it without having to study. You just happen to feel like that's what you need to do. So, you know, I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. Again, Ember, thanks so much for making that video. I thought it was really insightful. I love seeing that side of you because you really like to delve into like sociology and the psychology behind a lot of the stuff that we do as witches, and I really appreciate that. It's very educational, um, and I think a lot of people probably could use a little more education, and that's just what it is. You know, being a witch is all about educating yourself and continuing to learn and grow on a spiritual level. So, yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys, and until next time, I will talk to all of you soon. Blessed be.